to Beyond the Ring, a podcast that covers all things in the stock show industry from the informative to the insane. Starring Ryan Rash.
Never let the urgent get in way of the important.
And Dale Hummel.
Do not wake up one day and realize you did not live the life you could have.
Now on with the show.
Welcome to Beyond the Ring. This is Dale Hummel, along with co-star Ryan Rash.
Hello, hello, hello.
Ryan, I think it's time for another Beyond the Circus.
We just had one.
I know we just had one, but I'm telling you, there is a lot going on in the world. As we're starting here, my wife's hollering at me from another room, not realizing I'm trying to record here. And she says, you got to watch this. Got to watch this. And there's a border agent from Cleveland, Ohio.
I do not care about you and your border agents and all this stuff. I have real current events. I have real current events.
This is important. So
no, this is more important.
A Cleveland border agent goes down to the border to help. Is repositioned, reassigned, whatever it may be.
There is no border in Cleveland.
No, goes to Texas, your state, to help keep illegals and the cartel out of your state. While there, contracts COVID in November on a ventilator in bad shape. And I didn't hear all of it, so I don't know where he's at now. The family had a request to the government, the federal government that he works for, that could they transfer him from the hospital he'd been in for a long time in Texas back to Cleveland, and they deny him that privilege to be transferred to there or pay for it. And guess what they're paying for? Chartering planes to fly illegals all over the goddamn country. And they won't pay for a border agent that's on a ventilator to get back to where his family's at. This here gets me. All of this crap to boost their future voting population in the areas they want, and nobody's calling them out for it. So I find that important. But you go right ahead. Go on to the next one.
I have real current events, important stuff.
Go ahead.
So the BTRJLA has been going on for a month now, over a month actually. And I think that each week I'm going to try, and I'll probably forget, but each week I'm going to try to highlight a new top 10 of the children that are members of the BTRJLA. And so this is the first time I'm going to tell you that right now, the top 10 all-around exhibitors are as follows. See, this is real current events, Dale. Motivational, uplifting.
This is good.
Not you and your border agents.
Other than the fact that there are almost no shows in the North, so it's not real fair at the moment, but it is current.
It's only February. Get on the website. There's shows everywhere. Anyway.
Not many up here.
Oh, my Lord. Piper Liska from Arizona. The top 3, actually, are from Arizona. That's probably because there's been several Arizona shows right now. But anyway, Piper Liska from Yuma, Arizona is leading the all-around. Kiara Rogers is second. Claire, if I mess up your last name, I'm sorry. Murietta is third. Jamie Hoblin of New York, Nebraska is fourth. Casey Cleggs of League City, Texas is next, followed by Kenzie Brown of Grapeland, Texas, which is just up the road from me, literally like 15 minutes, and I don't know this family. Isn't that crazy? Jackson King of Quitman, Mississippi. Jalen Dodd of Conroe, Texas. Another Arizona kid, Reagan Rogers of Gilbert, Arizona. And rounding out the top 10 all-around this week is Sadie Varner of Bristow, Oklahoma.
Racist.
Okay.
I call racist. Did you notice there was one youth from the North?
Dude, what do you want me to do about it?
It's all good. I think it's great that we're jumping in and you're getting those points up there. Greatly, greatly appreciated.
Okay, now we can go back to your gloom and doom of the world. I do have another one, but this will really set you off.
Go. Have at it.
An executive order signed by Biden has afforded $30 million for them to pass out crack pipes.
I saw that. Now, they clarified that there wasn't crack pipes in all of the packages they were handing out, but there were syringes in all the packages.
And there are crack pipes. It literally says in that methods for smoking, all this other stuff. Yeah, it's great.
And you know, the portion I saw, there was an attorney on there that basically the federal government could be charged with laws that are on the book for distributing paraphernalia.
Oh, Marsha Blackburn is from Tennessee. She's all over this. Like she is like a dog with a bone. She ain't letting up.
Yeah. So my current events comes from the last 5 minutes before I sat down. There's approximately a 90-year-old grandfather, I would assume, in Canada that was out there to support the Canadian trucker protest with a megaphone or something, just supporting them peacefully, not doing any damage to anything. And he is taken by the Canadian police. I would call it roughed up, handcuffed, and thrown in the back of the squad car. I mean, this is a very old little gentleman that was really doing nothing that wasn't peaceful. And we have the protests, the burning down of buildings, the looting, all that going on, and we don't even arrest them.
Oh, my.
So I don't know. But the Canadian trucker vaccination protests, they're getting worldwide attention, Ryan. And I think it's gaining traction.
The people in Ottawa, the government, or I don't even know where the Canadian government is, but this deal's going in Ottawa, and the truckers have all the streets blocked off. They're very unhappy.
It's interesting. You have the east that swings a little more left, and the western part of Canada that's much more conservative, and it's similar to what we're experiencing here, but ours is kind of mixed up. We're all over the place. Where they're pretty divided east and west. So that the trucker protest, and I believe we have one organizing here that was going to start in California in approximately a month and head to Washington. GoFundMe pulls down their GoFundMe page, which was receiving a significant amount of money, all while GoFundMe goes up. And you remember the chop zone in Portland during our protest?
Yes.
The little free zone, do whatever the hell you want type zone where there's no guns allowed, yet 2 people get shot. That one. GoFundMe not only allowed them to have that up, but they promoted and pushed people to donate when we have a peaceful protest through the truckers that they pull down. And I'm not even sure what they're going to do with the money that's already been garnered. That is ridiculous. Maybe, Ryan, we need to get to the point where when I stop and think about it, it's as simple as this: distinguishing right from wrong. It's not left from right. It's not black from white. It's simply right from wrong. It's that simple. If we could instill in our youth right from wrong, we're way ahead of the game. But somehow with the adults in this world don't understand it. It's either political, it's racist, it's this or that. Why can't it just be right versus wrong?
Well, because people aren't rational thinkers for the most part.
Maybe I don't know. I don't understand how people can't see.
Well, that's the politically correct way to say that most people are delusional.
Yes, and I may be the delusional one, and the rest of the world is correct. I don't know. Even Beetlejuice, our lovely mayor of Chicago, is now attributing the rise in carjackings in Chicago to remote learning, that the kids aren't in school. I'll tell you what, if we get like that old school snow day up here in the north and kids get to kind of celebrate for a day and stay home, if in Chicago, when they get a day off school, they decide to go carjack people, there's probably a little more serious problem there. I don't know. It's just simple the fact that they weren't in school that day. Not good. Not good.
I don't know the chick's name or anything. But anyway, an Olympic gold skier yesterday or 2 days ago. I don't know. Anyway, so she was born and raised in America, and she moved to China. China,
right.
Your favorite place.
Right.
And she won the gold medal for China. I know that make you real happy. And at the press conference, the Chinese do not allow you, like you have to denounce your citizenship to become a member of the Chinese, whatever, be a citizen of China. And so at the press conference, when she wins her gold medal, she gets asked, she's only 18, by the way. She gets asked, did she denounce her U.S. citizenship? And she doesn't really answer the question. And so then they come at her again, and she doesn't answer. Like third time she's pressed about this, she says she's just 18 and she's still a kid, and she doesn't want to get involved in that.
Got it. Well,
her handlers prepped her well for this.
This is all foreign to me, but speaking of China, you brought it up. You did this.
I brought up the Olympics, your favorite thing.
I'm torn with the Olympics, Ryan. I do not want to watch it because I don't want to support the news companies, the television programs, corporate giants that are sponsoring the Olympics and throwing money to China.
It's a good thing you are not around Cali anytime, because I've been around Cali a lot, and that's all we do is watch the Olympics.
But I want to support the athletes because that they have busted their ass to get this point. I'm not saying we should have boycotted the Olympics, but they damn sure should not have been in China. And we went over that last time. Okay, time out. China, U.S. corporations. What did I hear? They're drunk on. We're drunk on Chinese dollars, and that's a good way to put it. There's so many Chinese dollars coming into Nike and some of the other corporations that continue to act woke in this country and allow the shit to go on in China and continue to dump money that way, it is ridiculous. Sponsoring the Chinese Communist Party via the Olympics, that's exactly what they're doing, all while China's committing genocide, human rights violations beyond belief that we aren't even aware of. It's something you don't even want to think about on a daily basis. These are taking place right now, all while the Olympic Games are being held in Beijing, and they're propping up this big boost from a propaganda standpoint. It's hypocrisy at its worst when we think about the U.S. corporations that continue to support that. With that said, when we think about China, and I'm on this, and people are going to think I'm as crazy about China as I am aliens, Ryan, but I promise you, and I'm saying this in all sincerity, when I stop and evaluate that China is taking every action they can to destroy our country, primarily from within, whether it's buying up the farm ground, buying up different corporations, sending fentanyl. Where's all the fentanyl made in the world? Most of it's made in China. If it's not made in China, they have control over it. They either mail it to us or they send it up through the cartel on the southern border. There is so many things. Every bit of intellectual property that we come up with, China steals, not held accountable to anything. They are being successful at burying us or destroying us from within. And unfortunately, these tactics, to me, they're using are staring us right in the face, yet people, U.S. corporations, and the government, they're allowing this to happen because of the dollar and because of convenience. When I go to buy something, whether it be on Amazon or go to Walmart or wherever it is, I have to, it takes me a lot longer to try to find products that are not made in China. But I'm telling you right now, if we were to stop, just as the people, it doesn't have to be our corporations, it doesn't have to be the government, just as people, if we could make an effort, a genuine effort, I know it's not convenient, I know it may cost us more money, but if we can make an effort not to buy Chinese products, that in itself, we buy so much, would strangle them economically and put them in a situation where they can't do what they're doing to our country. So if you don't choose to do this, good luck with this long term. Because if we do not adjust to this, you're going to feel a little pain now adjusting from a convenience or a dollar standpoint. But this is far, far less painful than what we're going to see long term. So Ryan, I don't know how to, I continue, our listeners send me articles about, heck, even how the agricultural world here in the United States is so tied to Chinese dollars. It's a sad situation, and I appreciate the listeners sending all that in. I need to sort through it all and kind of summarize it. But because I do get a lot of that information from our listeners, it frightens me. It's real. And I don't feel like we're acting in a manner as we should to prevent this from happening. Done with China.
Well, that's nice.
I knew you'd enjoy that.
I do the most. Thank you.
You're not worried about them.
What do you want me to do, sir?
I want you to not buy Chinese products.
I don't think I buy Chinese products other than Apple stuff.
I don't know that you look hard enough.
I have looked at my wardrobe items. Okay, sir. That is look. I don't buy much other than wardrobe items and makeup. And since the majority of my wardrobe is not China, because you've already made me look, the makeup part.
You're probably good. I'm guilty. I mean, I made the comment.
I'm not giving up an iPhone. Now, that's just all there is to it. Like, you just move on about that. It's not happening.
And where are we at with TikTok right now? Remember, Trump was going to force China to
leave the hot cops of TikTok alone.
I am telling you, there is no and I know how popular it is. I get it. I'm forced to think about using it from a branding standpoint. But I can't force myself to, knowing that it's Chinese owned or partially Chinese owned or whatever information they can gather because of that. It's got me. I'm struggling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Can we move on to something more positive?
You have something positive?
Yeah. Speaking all things COVID.
Oh, Jesus.
Numbers are dropping, Ryan, like a rock. Just as we kind of thought with Omicron that it was so contagious, it's going to spike and come down. It is. And we're going to take that as a positive. The UK and other European countries that are far, far more liberal as a population than we are just throwing away the mandates. They're going back to normal. The political bullshit is over. It's time to go. And I think they're actually finally looking at the research that's being dumped out there to all the media that the lockdowns, the mandates, the mask, all those things did far more harm than good. And it's proven now to be nothing more than political crap. And I think people are starting to realize it. This is the third day, Ryan, that our kids did not have to wear a mask today at going to school. The first day they weren't forced to wear a mask. And in Illinois, we have the governor that mandates masks in schools. And then one of the courts overturned and said the mandate was unconstitutional. Well, I don't know if we're supposed to listen to the governor or the court. I believe the court, but others are going to fight back and say, well, the governor says. So the first day, half of the students still wore masks. The second day, it was down to about a third. I don't know what it's going to be like today, but I think we're finally getting over this. And I have no problem if a child wants to wear a mask at school or a teacher. I'm perfectly fine out in a restaurant or anything they want to do, they can do. But obviously, we don't want to force them to do it. And I want to give them just a little bit of information. If that's not of N95 quality and really, really well fitted, those masks that I see people wearing are doing absolutely zero good to protect that person. So if you understand that, the only reason to wear one would primarily be political or uninformed.
I have never understood the whole mask nonsense, but it must be, like you say, getting much better, because even Newsom is letting the indoor mask mandate in California expire next week. He announced.
It's interesting that the Democrat governors, Ryan, are out in front of this, and I think they're being forced to, because I think the population just said, screw it. Kind of like here in Illinois, we've had the mask mandate for a long time, and there was a point that there just weren't very many masks being worn indoors like you were supposed to, and nobody was enforcing it. So I think the Democrat governors realize they've kind of lost control. All the research being dumped out there that they do no good. Their hands being forced to let those things expire. But guess who hasn't let go of it yet?
Biden.
Yeah. Wouldn't you think he'd want to get in front of that and try to be the one that, oh, I got rid of our mask, I made life back to normal? He's not. Oz dropped the ball.
So Biden is not giving up on the mask of it all.
And I'm sure he's going to have to by the State of the Union. He's going to have to, maybe that he's trying to hold out and say in the State of the Union saying, let's go back to, I don't know what he's doing, but it's over before that happens. I don't even know when that is, but it's a couple weeks off as far as I'm aware. But this brought to my attention. I know, Ryan, you and I had talked about this personally, that you or I, neither of us had said much about where we're at in terms of vaccinating or getting a booster. And I want to be very, very clear with this. I do not want to determine whether or not you go get vaccinated or our listeners go get vaccinated or not get vaccinated or get a booster or do not get a booster. What I would love to happen is for our listeners to research on their own, visit with their doctors, consider their individual situation in terms of their age and any other health conditions that they may or may not have, and make that decision on your own. And I understand it's difficult not to let the politics come into play. But as we stated so many times, try not to let that happen. Ryan, were you vaccinated a while ago, year ago, something like that?
It was like late April.
I was vaccinated, I believe, in March.
No, it was late April for me.
And we both came out on here and said we were. And I don't know that was popular with some of our listeners.
Yeah, well, again, this was not about being popular for me. This was about keeping my parents happy.
Yes. And on my end, I was trying to travel internationally to go look at some cattle in Argentina, and the unknown that I had concerns with in terms of long-term heart implications because of COVID, which I think there's probably just as much of a chance from the vaccine, possibly in hindsight, as there is from getting COVID. So some are asking me now, do we go get boosters? I have not. I'm again in a situation where I'm going to travel outside of the country, if at all possible, several times in the next few months. So with that being said, I either have to get vaccinated or I have to go on the black market and get a vaccination card. Have not gotten vaccinated, have not gotten my booster, and I'm not opposed to the booster.
Wait, you're vaccinated.
But I'm coming up on that year, and it appears though they're going to define vaccinations no longer as just 2 shots, but rather 2 shots plus that booster because of the length of time. But that's still a very gray area. The problem is I don't want to get within a week of travel and all of a sudden they come out with something new that I can't accommodate or I'm not able to go. So that concerns me. I do not want to get a booster personally. Remember I said, let's look at each individual situation. I am very confident that I picked up COVID while I was in Arizona at the Arizona Nationals.
Why are you going to tell people that when you didn't even test for it?
everybody around me tested for it. What did you, and I went on to the Cattlemen's Congress. Didn't you tell me I gave it to Mr. Boxell?
Yes, I do think you did.
Okay. So and maybe I'm not, maybe I shouldn't, maybe I should have went and got tested, but literally everybody that did get tested that was in that group, positive across the board. So with that said, I feel confident. I'm just going to make this personal decision that I had Omicron. And with that, my natural antibodies should be extremely strong right now. If I were to get a booster while I have that good of natural antibodies, it's going to do absolutely nothing for me. So why get the booster? Well, in my case, the only reason to get it is so I have that card updated so I can travel throughout the spring. But if you were tested, I'm going to say tested positive for COVID, I don't know how long those natural antibodies are going to last, but I promise you that is a much stronger immune response than what you're getting from the vaccination. And whether it's 3 months, 6 months, a year, I don't know what that number is. And it's shocking to me we don't have that data for how long the vaccinations are truly working or how long natural antibody production from being exposed to COVID is working. But if you've recently had COVID and it's absolutely confirmed, unless you're in a situation like I am, I personally don't see any reason to get the booster. But if you have not and you've been vaccinated before and it's kept you pretty safe, or you've never been vaccinated, yeah, maybe you should consider it. It's going to be an individual basis. And please do your research. Just take the politics out of it as best you can. Fair enough, Ryan?
Sure.
Do you have to get a booster because of the trust fund thing?
Well, they're really, really pushing very hard for it. I'm not going to lie. I have been able to avoid this so far, but
just literally avoid the topic when you can.
Yes, literally. They have both been boosted. They're big proponents of it. And so I think that if I can get through this week, because I was actually here in Crockett quite a bit this week, I'm not going to be here a lot after that. So maybe I can whatever. I have been to over 30 states since all this happened, and I have been in every type of large public situation you can imagine. And I don't think I'm a superhuman or anything like that. I have not been sick. I just haven't been sick. Like
no symptoms at all.
Not a sniffle, not anything, like nothing. Again, I don't think I'm like superhuman. It just hasn't happened for me. So therefore, I mean, I was around you at Congress. I was around everybody. I've been to Fort Worth, and like I am not lying to you. I know more people since the start of this year that have said they have tested for COVID than I knew the entire time up to there. The one thing that I'm going to say, and most of these people have had to test for work-related situations. Now, this is the one point that I have on this. I do know some people, and it's in growing popularity, that they get these home tests and they test for just no reason. Why would you do that? Why?
I can only think as if you had a secondary condition that you were worried it could get worse.
No, if you were sick, I understand. Like if you felt sick, etc. I get it.
But even then, I
know people that are just testing just for the hell of it.
Yeah, I don't know
why.
Okay, we're going long in current events. We haven't even said anything about Putin and Ukraine and NATO, and there's only one thing I'm going to come into this with, Ryan, on Ukraine getting invaded by Putin. I think he's there to get free shit. I think he wants whatever we'll give him, whatever Europe will give him, allow a long-term his pipeline to come into Germany, to have control and be able to strangle Europe out on a energy standpoint if he can at some point. So I think he's there for free shit. I'm not saying he won't invade because I don't know that we're going to give it to him. But one thing that's encouraging, he is very strong about NATO never allowing the Ukraine into their organization. I never thought that much about NATO. I thought, well, it's just another organization that maybe doesn't stand for much. I'm wrong, because Putin evidently believes that if he were to attack a nation that belongs to NATO, the entire NATO group will come down on him. And I would have told you probably not in the past, but if he believes that, I'm going to say it's true. He's not going to be bullied or scared off by something that's not real. And he is nervous of NATO. No question. That's a great thing.
I don't know, because again, I haven't studied it enough. I have studied Putin over the years because he's been there since like Gorbachev, basically. Anyway, but I mean, I think it's going to have to be a massive amount of free shit, as you put it that way, for him not to try to take Ukraine back, because I do think he desperately wants that back. Like, he does not like the fact it was taken away. And
no,
so
I just don't know.
I do think there is, in the end, all of his decisions, by and large, which this speaks to his intelligence. And again, it's not going to be popular to say Putin's intelligent, but he is. More times than not, his decisions have been made on what is the better thing for him. And when I mean him, I think him personally, not Russia, the country.
Not the country, him personally.
And so I do think if we all decide to pony up a massive amount of free shit for him, then he probably won't. Otherwise, because I think what he personally wants is that country back under his control. But if it's going to benefit him financially to not to, we'll wait.
Yeah, I think that's where we're at. I really do. Now, I heard a strategist get on there and basically say that the troops that he's assembled, it's kind of a little bit from here and there. It's not a cohesive unit. And not that they couldn't go in anytime they want and probably have success, but not to sustain something long term. So I don't know. I really don't. I know we're long in current events, and we're going to move on. What do you think of that?
Lovely. So before we move on to you and your Mr. Boxall, I do want to give a shout out to one of our national top 10 jacket sponsors. That's Bullseye Ranch, the Barry Smith family. Bullseye Ranch is the home of several national and international champion Brahman bulls and females. Barry and Charlotte, along with their sons Lee, Derek, and Cole, have exhibited countless champions across the country. For years, the Smith family has been dedicated to the production of quality, registered purebred Brahman cattle. Their success can be attributed to this ranch philosophy, developing progressive Brahman genetics by utilizing cutting-edge reproductive technology and common sense practices. Bullseye Ranch is here, or not here, but in Burton, Texas. I have known the Barry and Smith family for a long time. I actually bought steers for their youngest son, Cole. They're great people, and we appreciate their sponsorship of the BTRJLA.
Thank you, Bullseye Ranch. You know, Ryan, I have a pretty deep passion for Brahman cattle, even though I don't get to see very many.
I am very well aware.
Yeah,
you get giddy when you get to judge
I do.
them.
When there's a good Brahman that comes, it's just phenomenal. That bull down in Mississippi, I think about him daily.
I know you do.
Before we jump into the main topic, I would like to extend a sincere thank you to Boxall Manufacturing for not only the great memes on social media, but also sponsoring this podcast. Thank you, Mr. Boxall and company. I also would like to give a shout out to Pope Joy Livestock Hauling. We're back into sales season. Had a sale last night, Ryan. I don't know if you're aware.
Wait, hold on a second. That's all Mr. Boxall gets this week from you?
That's it.
Did y'all break up?
No, it's still cold and we don't need the chiller. And we're not using the blowers today, so it's not just like right on my mind.
I think there's something personally going on.
I talked about the memes. He's covering social media memes so well right now that he's good. He's got it for the week. And okay. I had to shorten it up because Mr. Pope Joy, who remember we talked about him last year, he's back going again. He's making trips from the Midwest out to the West Coast and back and everywhere in between. And we have a lot of different haulers that haul for us, Ryan, and a lot of them do a great job, and there's different prices. Some are door to door. Some you're going to meet on the interstate. And that's something that maybe we ought to talk about sometime, because a lot of people that buy from us, and I'm sure many other breeders across there, aren't familiar with how the haulers work and things like that. So maybe we can go into more detail in one of the episodes and kind of explain how that works. But for the most part, you can get them just about anywhere in the country if you're willing to drive and meet them somewhere and willing to wait. Maybe it's a week, maybe it's 2 weeks, whatever it may be. But Pope Joy Livestock can be found on Facebook or Pope Joy Livestock Hauling. Stephen does a phenomenal job. I get a lot of positive feedback when he's hauling our stock. And again, professional, responsible, does everything the right way. We appreciate the job he does hauling our stock. I appreciate the fact that he throws some sponsorship dollars to the podcast to keep promoting the youth and the stock show industry. Thank you, Stephen and family. Brian, it is time for the power of the purse. And yes, this was the gays topic. Ryan, if you would like to jump in with all your sparkle in both feet on this one, have at it.
So
I love the topic. I love it.
I don't think so. But anyway, when I pitched this to Dale last week, he did not love it. Now he loves it.
Yeah,
but anyway.
remember, it takes me 24, 48, a few days sometimes.
I'm just going to be honest with you. Like, attending the Fort Worth Steer Show, there was a lot of talk, not only in person and all this other stuff, but also on social media about how much money was being spent, what the ones that won cost, all this other stuff. And I just and I'm going to be the first to tell you a lot of it was disinformation. But anyway,
fake news.
As someone, and again, I don't want y'all to think that I'm saying this bragging or anything else, but I probably don't know any other child that probably spent as much money on animals as what my family has. Or we're in a very small group, even to this day, even though I've been out a long time. I want to say that, yes, we spent a lot of money. And
can I insert just briefly?
Go right ahead.
Your mother's not going to like this.
I don't care.
She's not going to like this one bit.
Dale, there's something I do daily that my mother doesn't like, probably.
Okay.
So
see, I just want to make sure you
had to
you
learn
were
to
aware.
Work through it. But
okay.
And so, did that give me an advantage when I was a junior? Yes, it did, and that's just part of it. But again, the main point of this topic, and I'm going to give examples, is it takes more than money to win at this thing. It does. That is baked in the cake. That is part of it. It is real. It is out there. It is evident. But it takes more than that. And I hope that through talking to this and going over this and explaining how other things are involved in it, that other people will see. Because, and the other part that I also want to bring up from the start, people spending money on show animals, it's okay. Like, everybody that does this for a living, I guess I use this analogy a lot. Very few people, or any, wake up one morning and they're a used car salesman and say, you know what I'm going to go do? I'm going to go sell livestock now. The people that do this to earn their living are products of this program. And they loved it so much and they were so passionate about it that they wanted to try to make a living doing it. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with them getting lots of money for quality animals. Okay, there.
That sounded like one of my rants. And I'm gonna give just a little bit of history here, because in contrast to Ryan, I think maybe this is gonna be a great discussion, Ryan. I can state that I have shown livestock when I was a child on a very, very restricted budget. Limited success personally. As I moved on and began to help my nephews when they started showing, still restricted budget, maybe a little more success, but also a little more knowledge going into it. And then helping other families years later with maybe a little more budget and just more experience on my end, much, much greater success, all the way to where I'm at right now with my children showing. And Ryan would tell you that they're on a very restricted budget, but they really are not.
Your children?
Yes, they are not. I spend money on livestock and their show projects. Maybe because we raise them, it doesn't appear that way, but we could put them in a sale and they could garner more money. But anyway, so my children are in a situation where they do have access to tremendous goats, I would think. And we've just, over the past few years, shown a few steers, and we have a heifer in the barn right now, that some success with the steers and hopefully some with the heifer. But I can assure you, from my standpoint, and I can go all the way back, maybe I should be a little more specific about it. When I was in high school, I can remember a friend of mine and I went together to justify the cost of a $1,500 steer. Seems crazy. I get it, but it was real. I mean, that was, if we were going to own this calf, we had to pool our resources to get it done. I can remember going with Mr. Fugate, Eric Fugate, over to Farr Stock Farms. Tom Farr meets us there and he says, okay, here's, out on the Cargill floor, here's the pen of hogs that weren't going into sale, $75 a piece. Buying one of those barrels for my nephew that ends up medium weight champion at the Illinois State Fair. Great purchase. Sometimes those things work out, sometimes they don't. I can remember working for a family that showed cattle here locally so I could keep a steer there and defer some of the expenses of that, what that project costs. So hopefully I can bring another perspective into it. And shockingly, even though Ryan and I come from opposite or polar ends of the spectrum in terms of what we had access to financially as youth and how we went about our projects, I am going to be with Ryan that I can assure you that all of my years experience and looking back on it, there is no question, zero question. I'll argue this with everybody. Having financial resources makes it much easier and more convenient, and it contributes to it. But that in itself is not going to get you success, period. It just is not going to. And we can go into more detail about that. But no question, it's a part of, as Ryan said, it's baked in the cake. It is a part of it. And I wasn't at Fort Worth, so I didn't get to hear this, but it's the same thing we've heard in the past, maybe just kind of accelerated this week. And it sounds like it from what Ryan has to say. So there's a lot of that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the different species. When we see cattle that are young, sheep that are young, or goats, for the most part, what you see is what you get. The ability to predict maturity on those, I think, is easier maybe than what it is in pigs. And that's just coming from my perspective. Maybe a better example is there's more likelihood of a less expensive pig getting along really, really well than what we see maybe in the cattle, sheep, and goats. Not saying that doesn't happen in the other species, and we can go into more detail about it, but in general, I think it goes down that path. But Ryan, let's go into what else it takes to succeed, and maybe succeed at the highest levels, whether it be the state fair or the national shows or Texas majors. You're trying to tell me that just because you went out and spent whatever you spent on a steer, that didn't mean it was going to win.
No, it didn't mean it was going to
win. No, you told the story you had to buy one 3 times to get the damn thing to
win. Thanks, Dale. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I think, in at least my personal opinion, and I think the thing about families or operations that spend more money on animals, whatever species it is, I don't know if it's so much that they spend more on a specific animal. I think actually what the deal is that gives them more of an advantage than paying an exuberant amount for one animal is, more times than not, those people buy multiple animals. So they have a cushion there if one doesn't turn out. And I every year we had animals that didn't turn out, but we had a whole lot of them on feed. So it wasn't like everything was wrapped up in one or two. And I think that's the real power of the purse, if, like, being honest.
I think you're correct. And I think the power of the purse goes a long ways to, and again, not that you can't do it, but it makes it easier to have that heated facility for showing in the winter up in the north, or to have that wash rack, or to have what I think the equipment, the facility, I think it comes in from those angles as well. But simply having the option to buy more than one animal, great. And Ryan and I have talked about, if you're on a certain budget and you want to have success, we've talked about, instead of buying 3 average ones, buy that one really good one. Well, guess what? If you have the financial ability to buy 3 really good ones, where are you at, Ryan?
Then you're better off. There's no doubt.
You are. It just is. It doesn't mean they're all going to turn out. It doesn't mean they're all going to win. But you're starting at a better place.
There are other. I always look at being, and like back when I was broken home or stuff like this, I think it is like a 3 criteria. And yeah, you have to be able to buy an animal that is exceptionally good to start with. But again, you can hunt and find those in any price range. It just is. You have to look harder and you have to go farther and all that to find the cheaper ones, but they're still there. I love to tell the story of the first steer that Callie ever showed for me. And that was a $4,200 calf. And in Texas, that is pretty low budget animal. Okay, I'm just going to be honest. That steer went on to be the reserve grand champion at the Star Texas. I can give many other scenarios where this has happened. But I mean, it can happen. You also have to have a lot of you or somebody in your group, whoever is advising you, whoever you buy this animal from, there's got to be a lot of expertise involved in terms of daily care, feeding, all of the things that go into keeping that animal in the top form, that from the time you purchased it all the way to the end, whether it's a breeding or a market animal, that is a big part of it. And I think this goes unsaid the most, and it takes a lot of work ethic. And while we spent lots of money on my animals, I will still say to this day, and anybody that was involved in my junior show career will agree, I worked as hard as anybody. And I was out at the barn before school, after school till dark, all that stuff. That is also a part of it. And it's just not the exhibitor, it's whoever is involved. Everyone has to be dedicated, and everybody has to have a very heavy work ethic to reach those goals.
Absolutely. I'm gonna throw it in there. You can spend any amount of money across species, and if we toss them into a barn or a pen and we don't give them the time, the care, all of that, it does not matter how much you put into them. They're not going to win. Would that be accurate?
Yeah. And that's where these other two things, I think it doesn't matter if it's T-ball or sports or stock shows or, Olympic ice dancing. I don't care what it is. The playing field will never be completely level at all in a competitive event. But I think where the expertise and the work ethic part, they do help level the playing field some, because just like you said, you can spend an exorbitant amount on an animal, and then if you don't do anything with it or do very little with it, then it's not going to win in the end. And I think, especially in terms of the knowledge, if you seek out those people that have been stay successful, are successful, you go to them, and that's who you buy from, or that's who you purchase from, or stuff like that. That is going to help you a lot in the game. And we've talked about that multiple times. You've got to find somebody, unless you are one of those fourth generation families that have been doing this forever. Even people that were extremely successful when they were a kid, they've been out of it until their kids start showing. Those people go and they don't just say, you know what? I was a badass when I was a kid. I know how this works. They go, if they want their kid to succeed, they go and find those people that have stayed in it and stayed successful and said, hey, yeah, I was good at this, but I've been absent a little bit. What have I missed? Where are we at, etc.?
There is so much to that, Ryan, and I hope people are listening, because that is exactly where it is. And you could have been on top of the game in the 80s or 90s yourself and step back away from it for a while. I'm not saying you still don't implement the same basics and attention to detail and the work ethic, but things change, and you have to adapt, whether it's the type of livestock or a manner of presentation, or we've worked out different feeding management regimes, whatever it may be, it definitely has changed. So we've got to stay current in that. What I'm going to say next, I hope it's not taken wrong, but I'm going to use an example. We had a sale last night, and I had several individuals, some from Texas. I think probably a lot of them actually were from Texas, looking for Dallas goats, talk to me about, okay, I'd heard from such and such, or this other family had your goat, and you're very willing to give customer service, and you send out a protocol, and you FaceTime, or you have your team help these kids. I can't tell you the value and how many calls that I had from people and what I think it adds to our sales. And I'm going to be very, very open with this. I think our goats will bring more money because families know that kind of service is coming along with it. So we have our lot 6 goat in our sale, and it goes into somebody else's sale. It's going to bring more money in our sale because people are searching for that kind of assistance. And it seems very simple to me. On my end, whether the goat brings more money doing that or not, it's very logical, Ryan. If you talked about youth growing up in this industry being so passionate about it, they start raising livestock and breeding livestock and selling livestock, and there's nothing wrong with them selling livestock for a lot of money. Well, guess what? I think it's important. I appreciate the fact that people will come to our program and spend a little more money because of the customer service. But let's take that completely out of the picture. in my own self-preservation, would it not be wise for every breeder to do whatever? And I know there's not enough time. They maybe don't build it into their program, but for that breeder to continue to have success, each and every family that they sell to needs to have a positive experience and have the best success they can. And for that to happen, sometimes those that need that assistance or need some guidance, why wouldn't you give it to them? By us helping those families, it makes us more successful. Does that make sense?
No, I completely agree. And, that's what I was talking about, whether you're a newbie or you're somebody that did this and now your kids are starting all that stuff. Even me, who was wildly successful, junior show career, helping people, all that stuff, I always still, when I was purchasing these projects and these steers and heifers for other kids and other families, I would still go to the people that were always in the winner's circle. I guess one of the most valid points that was brought up at Fort Worth last week is the families or the breeders or brokers or whatever that are always at those backdrops. It's more than money that got them there. And while some people won't believe that, that's the truth. It is everything else in this program. Yeah, they may have spent a lot of money to get that animal, but also it is everything else that comes after that that kept that animal and kept them on the way to the backdrop and got them there in the end. And that is something that nobody focuses on. And I think that a lot of times, and I've seen it more in the last year than ever, people will say, oh, well, that one won because it cost so much money, or or like, well, ours is a bred and owned. And again, there's nothing wrong with breeding your own, but there's also, I just want to say again, there is nothing wrong with people who are passionate about this industry and love it, doing this for a living and being successful.
Absolutely. And I'm going to state an important fact, not fake news, not fiction, Ryan, an important fact. Look at all the dollars. People can look from the outside, whether it be online sales, so you're more aware of it. Looking in from the outside, whether we're selling goats for a lot of money or somebody's selling cattle for a lot of money or whatever it may be, I promise you that those breeders, there are very few breeders raising show livestock that are making a living doing so. Even though they're selling for those kind of dollars, the inputs and everything that goes into acquiring those genetics and doing what they do is much greater than what most believe. And I don't know what percentage of people that are in the raising of show livestock are making a living doing so, or even making a profit doing so. A lot of them have other incomes, and it's a hobby for them because they love doing it. They want to be involved. They want to give back to this industry. They want to have their kids be a part of it. There's lots of great reasons to do it. But guess what? Those that are truly making money doing it are very, very few.
When we were sitting there at Fort Worth and this was all circulating about and all this other stuff, I was just thinking to myself and not out loud, and I'm not going to give specific examples, but there was a lot of very expensive steers at the Fort Worth Stock Show, just like there is every single year. And there's going to be very expensive ones at Angelo and San Antonio and Houston and Austin in all species, not just steers. And I saw several of those not stay in the ring. I saw several of those not get a brand. So if it was just about and these families also work at it, they do a nice job, they've been successful, some of them not, but if it was just about what it cost, then they would give the judge the amount that animal cost on a little sheet of paper like an EPD, and that would factor into it. That doesn't happen. And people just need to really think about what I'm saying there when they're starting these arguments.
Agreed completely. And you touched on something earlier that you talk about, even though you were that involved in showing and brokering, but now if you have a question to something, I'm going to use one of our examples. I'll use Jessica Rabbit as our example, a little red Angus heifer that my youngest daughter is going to be showing. I had a couple management questions about it. I reached out to Ryan. He answered most of them, but I think on one of them, Ryan, you actually sourced out to somebody else that you felt maybe would have a better knowledge in that area.
Yep.
And it's all about finding those that can guide you. and not being afraid to me, it's not ask. It's just smart. It's not like you're asking for help and you're admitting that you know absolutely nothing. It doesn't, that's irrelevant. It's finding those that are willing to give you some guidance and sourcing the best information you can possibly get. It's that simple.
Talking about that situation, all this stuff, I think I'm extremely knowledgeable about a lot of things. I think there's some things that I don't know enough about. And I think the people that continue to succeed, regardless of how much money is spent, are the ones that keep their eyes and their ears open, and more times than not, their mouths closed. Because I learn something new every single day, whether when I'm at a stock show or looking at animals or whatever, because I want to. And I think it is a learning process for me still to this day. And if you're not open to learning things and you think you know it all, or that you don't need to know anything else, that is when your success is probably going to start to decline, because there are people around you at all times that you can learn something from, whether it's a little bit of information or a wealth of information. If you're open to it and you'll just pay attention and you'll listen. And one time on this podcast, I don't remember, somebody asked me who was my greatest mentor, all this other stuff. And I was very honest. I don't think it was one person. I think it was the fact that I was very lucky to be around a plethora of people that knew a great deal. And I was open to listening to all their opinions on everything and then developing my own. And when you stop learning, you stop living, and that's going to be the downfall. And I think that has a very major part in success in anything in this world.
Could not agree more, Ryan. And that we always talk about history and experience, and that's we can sum it up as experience, but experience and doing something for a long time or for a long period of time is not beneficial unless you're paying attention and trying to learn, opening your mind up and accepting that everything there's a better way to do it. And there always is. I can promise you there is always a better way. I'm not saying that somebody's doing it better than you, but you can certainly pull from what they're doing and make your individual situation better. Unfortunately, there is sometimes intentional, sometimes unintentional disinformation in our industry, Ryan, that you've got to sort through. So you're going to sit back and watch somebody at the Fort Worth Lamb Show, that there's this drench being given and that drench being given, and this person's spraying something on the hide and this one's doing something else. Stop and just think about what you're doing because somebody else does it versus what you're doing to truly make an impact biologically, or how that animal appears, or how he feels, or how he looks, or even how he acts in terms of a mental state. So make sure that everything that you do has a purpose. If you're going to do something and you don't even know why you're doing it, you better step back. I'm not saying don't do it, but step back, find somebody that maybe understands the situation a little bit better and ask, hey, why are we giving this drench, or why are we shearing him at this close, or leaving more hair on him or wool on him, or whatever it may be. If you're doing it just because somebody else did it and you're unaware of why we're doing that, don't do it until you understand, until you go and seek out that information. And just like Ryan talked about before, we have to use every resource. And guess what? It is, and we've talked about this many times, it is increasingly more competitive across species each and every year at the bigger shows, even at the county fairs. So guess what? You have to continue to learn or you're going to get passed up. It's that simple.
And this is probably not going to be real popular to say, but I'm going to say it anyway because y'all know we don't care. I don't care if what I say is popular. Talking about the work ethic that it takes to be successful in this, that work ethic doesn't just stay in the barn. It's also about the showman's ability to present that animal out in the ring, all this other stuff. And right now, there are more people than ever that are on the broker side of this in this industry, that they probably raise some, but they still buy some and they resell them and all this other stuff. And I think that's great. There is a lot to be said for the fact that people pay attention to those families that work very hard and the ones that are super great showmen. And whether you want to believe this or not, those families are sought out by a lot of people because they want those animals in those homes. And I'm just going to tell you that a lot of times somebody will take less money for an animal to get it in the right home to increase the chances of it doing something in the end. And again, online sales aren't the same. I'm talking about private treaty deals. But because if they take a little off and they can get it into that family, that's the great home with the great showman, then the odds of that one being successful throughout the year and at the end or the payday, whatever that is, are a lot better than selling it for more money to somebody that they don't know anything about. And that's in it because on all sides of this, having an animal that's successful, they can advertise, say this one's winning this, that's going to do nothing but create more publicity for them, increase people that want to buy from them, all this other stuff. So that part is in it too. And that is something that is completely controlled by you and your family, making sure that you do as much as you can with what you got, making sure that your kid is the best showman that they can be. That is going to help you. And that is in there. And so again, that is something that we don't talk about. And it's a positive thing. And it does help in terms of help leveling the playing field. And that's there. And nobody wants to talk about that. They just want to talk about the rich people that spend too much money. And I'm over it. I'm just telling you, I'm over it. I really am.
I get it. I want to clarify as Ryan is talking about.
My name is Ryan, sir.
I got it.
I don't know this Brian person you speak of.
Breeders was coming out. I was a little ahead of myself. So as Ryan talked about, when there are more brokers and breeders out there and selling, all these things are happening. And it's not just those that spend a lot of money that some of these breeders and brokers are willing to sit down and help and guide and manage. I can tell you that when we work with clients of every budget, we have people that'll spend $1,000 on a goat. We have people that'll spend $15,000 on a goat. But guess what? When my daughter Tara or our manager Craig or our herdsman Tristan or myself or even my wife Holly get a call or a question, it does not matter if it's the person that purchased the $1,000 goat or the $15,000 goat. We're going to answer that question to try to give that family as much knowledge and information as we possibly can. They all get the same protocol. All of that happens. So you can seek that out, and it doesn't matter where your budget is. You can still obtain that same learning experience and gain as much knowledge from those that are doing it every day and doing it on a professional level where they've been forced to get better at it and to find new ways to do things and to do the best that they possibly can. So don't think you have to go out and spend $50,000 on a steer to get assistance. I promise you, if you seek out those brokers and or breeders that are willing to give you everything they got, irregardless of what you're spending in terms of their knowledge. And a lot of times some of this knowledge is held a little tighter than ideal. And if I'm a family that's not in the business of selling, if I've got something I think works really well, I'm probably going to hold it tight too. I'm not in that position. It's in our interest to get our clients to do well. It's in the interest of all breeders and all brokers, anything they sell to do well. And I think sometimes, and here's the point I want to get across, sometimes families don't reach out to that breeder or that broker they bought from because they don't want to bother them or they don't think they're going to get an answer or whatever it may be. And sometimes maybe you won't. And then I suggest you better find another breeder or broker. That's simple. But don't be afraid to reach out and ask, because I would sure think more times than not, they're going to respond and they're going to give you everything they possibly can to make you successful. So don't hesitate to ask. If you don't get those answers or you don't get the response, jump ship, find another one.
So hold up, though. You're saying that when somebody calls y'all, you don't ask them, excuse me, what did you pay for your animal? Oh, so this is only a question we answer to the $10,000 and above group.
No, we do not answer in that manner.
That's kind of like the judge not having the price of the animal out there in the ring, isn't it?
Agreed. And you know what? My memory is so short.
Funny how that works.
It is funny. And, you know, and sometimes in all seriousness, I do worry that sometimes when people don't spend a lot because of precedence, because of history, maybe they're less likely to reach out. And we have some people that don't spend, that have a lower budget, maybe just want to go to their county show, that reach out on a weekly basis. And we have others that you never hear from again. But I want to put it out there. And I can speak from ourselves. We are here to take those texts or calls or whatever we can do. And I promise you, those other breeders out there, irregardless of species, and brokers, they are out there that are willing to help you. So reach out to them, period.
I don't know if you have any more, but the last thing that I want to say on this, and again, I think that we need to step back and we need to look and really think about this, because in the end, it doesn't matter what you spend on that animal or all these other things. It takes all of it to come together 99 times out of 100 for it to work. But in the end, whether it's a breed champion or a state fair champion or a county fair champion or a major show champion, Texas major, whatever, if that kid and that animal won, and deservingly so, that was a good animal, it was shown well, all this other stuff, then quit the bitching, because you're taking away from that child's moment. And that child worked hard, and that family worked hard, and whoever was behind them worked hard, and they deserve their moment in the spotlight with other people trying to tear them down. Lift yourselves up to that level instead of tear people down. Because I'm telling you, as a kid, I got this all the time. And while I was strong enough to rise above the bullshit, just because we spent a lot of money on animals did not make me any less deserving to win than anyone else. And that's just how it was. And I knew that because I was so passionate about this and so competitive and worked so hard. And so you need to think about the things you say and the things you post, because there is a child and a family involved that you're taking away from their moment. And if it was your kid or your family, you wouldn't like it if you were on the receiving end.
Good place to end it. Just remember, we can all do better, period. Ryan, it's time. Not Brian, but Ryan.
Yeah.
It is time.
Hold on before you start your lovely... And let me tell y'all something. So I had somebody text me yesterday, and they wanted to submit an anonymous question to this podcast. And I said, well, you're going to have to do that with Dale, because I don't even know what they are beforehand. So I was like, they're like, oh, yes, you're like, no, I don't. But before we get to Dale's favorite part of the podcast.
And it's only my favorite because you don't know what they are. That is the only reason.
Exactly. I want to say thank you to S&R Meat Goats and the Rob French family for being the national BTR JLA goat sponsor. S&R Meat Goats is committed to consistently producing high-quality show goats that compete at the county, state, or national level. Furthermore, we have always been passionate about supporting the youth involved in agriculture, especially in the show ring, and they couldn't have thought of a better way than becoming a national BTR JLA sponsor. So we thank S&R Meat Goats and the Rob French family for their sponsorship, and also the Magnus family from Houston, Texas. They're a national top 10 jacket sponsor. They didn't want to support a company, anything. They wanted to support the kids. And so we really appreciate the Magnus family, Gary, Sherry, Casey, and Shelby, for your support.
S&R Meat Goats, Rob French, good people, Magnus family, everyone out there, thank you. This is blown up, Ryan, in terms of sponsorship like you could never imagine, and it's appreciated. And there are going to be some outstanding awards out there for the youth that are members and jumped on board. So I'm excited. Thank you to all those you people are making that possible. Ryan likes to pretend like he does a lot of work for it, but it's your sponsorship that makes a pretty big difference as well.
I never said it wasn't the sponsors.
Okay, question and answer, Ryan. And I kept saying I was going to dig deeper and find some terribly ones that would really set you off. And I don't know that I succeeded this week, but I do have some. First question's from Dawn. Question for Beyond the Ring. Why is it that if a Hereford is the true winner, no one ever picks it? We had one 2 years ago who was way better than the winner out at our local fair, and we ended up third overall. The judge told us he was the best, but not sexy enough. Ryan, did you judge that one?
Probably not, because
sexy enough. You would be. You're the only one that I'm aware of that.
But I've never said one. I don't know. I don't think I was the judge, but
okay.
So she's asking, why do breed or minor breed ones not win as much as whatever? And we've gone over this before, but it's a very good question. I think regardless of species, that there is a whole set of people that sort stock that just think that whether it's a crossbred hog or a, crossbred steer, etc., those things, that those win typically. And so therefore that the breed steers have to be, or the breed animals in any breed have to be so much better than the ones that typically win, or they don't deem them worthy. I am the exact opposite, I guess. And I mean, those that watch me judge, I probably use more breed animals, minor breed animals, than most people. And for me, when I'm going to pick an overall, it's a 3 criteria process. Which one looks the very best that day? Which one for their breed is the very best? And if they were at a show only amongst those contemporaries that were in their breed, which one would be the most competitive? And then finally, which one would I take home? Because I like to win the shows as much as I like to judge them. But how good they are for their breed. And you know what? I haven't seen very many Hereford steers better than this one here, or I haven't seen many Berkshire Gilts better than this one here. That is a big factor that I take into consideration when I'm picking an overall. And I think a lot of people don't do that. That doesn't make my opinion right or there's wrong, or my philosophy right or there's wrong. That's just how I think it happens more times than not.
No, and Dawn, I think that's just how it is. Every judge is going to have their own opinion. They're hired to give it. And you made the comment that the judge said he wasn't sexy enough. Well, guess what? That's maybe part of the criteria. So it's hard to deem one animal that you think may be the best one there, although we all want to think that we know, or we have our opinion, but it's not always going to be the same as that judge. And each one, just as Ryan stated, they're going to put different emphasis on different things. Some are going to want the best animal out there, irregardless of breed, color, sex, whatever it may be. Others are going to look at it more as Ryan does. Which one's going to do better within its breed at the national level?
Depending on who the judge is, I've always stated this, and I don't think people listen to it as much. There's a whole lot of factors within every judge, whether it's he or she or whoever's out there, that because of their upbringing and their background and all this other stuff, that subconsciously and sometimes consciously affects the decision making going out there. Just like if you've got an Angus guy standing out there in a breeding heifer show picking an overall, at the very least, he is going to be somewhat biased to an Angus because that's what he raises and shows and sells and breeds and sees every day. It would be the same for any breed, any person that's judging, regardless of what breed they raise. So all of those go in there. So
excellent question, Don. I think we've touched on it before, but I think it's good to come back and kind of make sure that those that maybe didn't hear it before get a chance to hear that response from Ryan. And thank you, Ryan. That was good. Next one comes from Anna. New to showing sheep, seems like some older youth are using excessive force and slapping their sheep's loin while on the move. Monkey see shouldn't always monkey do. What can I tell my kids this year when we see this happen?
I think on this deal, and I'm not sure exactly what she's talking about because obviously I wasn't there when she's observed this, but like I do think that when a sheep stalls out, I see kids like tap them on the side more to try to get them going again. But I've never seen it excessive. What I have seen is excessive, and I don't think it's slapping, but like if you got one that's up in your loin when you walk by the judge, you go to push it down. And I've talked about this before. That's the worst thing you can do because it just draws attention to the fact that your sheep is up in the loin. But I guess I haven't seen aggressive slapping while they're in motion now. And this is always going to happen when you go to brace and get ready. Like you tap that one to make it tense up before I have seen kids get a little heavy-handed with that at once or twice, a time or two, but I think we've really gotten better at that the last couple years than we used to be. But I do think I don't have a problem with if your sheep or goat stalls out, you tapping it on the side to try, or back there on the hip to try to get it moving again. I would highly encourage you not to push the loin down while you're walking your animal in front of the judge, because again, it just draws a real big red flag.
No, great answer. And I can't imagine somebody slapping that loin while they're moving. That's very counterproductive. So I would take that approach with your kids. Just maybe they're trying to push the loin down, maybe they're trying to get it to move, but tapping them on the side is a better idea. And there's always going to be individuals that maybe when the judges come up to handle, will give a little harder slap to that top. And it may be more just they flat-handed it where it makes more noise than it actually is painful to that animal. But we need to be conscious of this. A lot of times people in the crowd aren't just livestock people. And we do have to take into consideration animal welfare and be smart about it. I don't see a lot of problems with it. However, there are individuals on occasion that get out of hand, and I assume that's what you witnessed. I don't think it's the norm, and by no means do we need to follow the lead on something like that. Next question comes from Noel. Are you ready, Ryan?
Yes.
Why does it seem like in the goat and sheep ring, fewer judges evaluate them on the move and talk less about skeletal build? If a show pig is set outside its skeleton, he or she gets called out for it. But I do not see this in the goat ring especially. It actually is the opposite. We're oftentimes looked at as an advantage. Please explain this to me.
Amen and hallelujah.
I was excited on this one.
It is beyond my comprehension that structure is not valued more in the sheep and the goats of it all. I do not understand it. I don't get it. I think Dale likes to harp on pigs and their structure, and I have personally said that one of the reasons that I like judging hogs so much is there are so many structural differences, far more structural differences in hogs than I think all the other species, and that's what I really enjoy reading and deciphering and describing, and so that's why I really am very passionate about judging hogs. It is not there in the sheep and goats. And like not saying do they not only place on it, they don't place on that criteria in sheep and goats. They don't even talk it. At least in cattle, while it may not be placed on that, they will more times than not bring up the structure there. We just don't do that at all in the sheep and goats. It's just no. And I do not understand it. And I really think that if that trend continues, and I'm going to state over the last 5 years, I think the structure is getting worse in both of those species. And I think it's only going to continue down that way if we don't pay more attention to it. And I promise you, if I am judging a sheep and goat structure, you're going to hear a lot about structure, probably more than you want to. That's probably why I don't get to judge them more.
I like the answer, Ryan. And I think sometimes when you're leading the sheep around the ring, or you have a chain or even a halter on a goat, I think the judges, it's easy for them to pass it off that the animal's not leading well, and that is, and especially in goats, some goats just don't. So I think sometimes we give them a pass because it's awkward for them to walk around with a chain pulling up on their neck, or somebody holding onto the head of a lamb, or whatever it may be. So I think that's part of it, that it's just harder to evaluate because you have to look through whether the animal's cooperating or holding itself in a natural position or not. And that's part of the reason that we
don't give excuses.
No, I'm going to go the other direction here, probably much harder. But I think that I'm guessing that's it. I'm going to go to this outside their self up front. And I saw it in the full blood goat arena. And I thought, well, this is just crazy. It's just some of the ABGA judges, the certified judges on the full blood side that aren't necessarily livestock people. And I know there are livestock people that are certified, but the ones that are just goat people maybe just don't understand that when we make them that wide up front, it's like their skeleton they're sitting outside of their skeleton. And from a functional longevity standpoint, it's no good. It's They like to talk about how wide chested they are and how opened up they are. And believe me, in the market world, in the market goat or lamb world, I will take especially a lamb way wider than where most are up in that chest, as long as the shoulder is constructed and laid in there correctly. But when we all of a sudden go outside of the skeleton, especially in the goat world, I do not see that as an advantage. I want them wide chested. I want them opened up. But that shoulder, not just when they're propped up, but when they let off of that one and stand natural, and when they go on to the move, when that shoulder falls apart and they go outside of themselves, I'm out. Out. Not an advantage.
Anyway, good question.
All three questions were good. Noel, I particularly appreciate that one. Hopefully the others were answered well also. With that said, Ryan, it's been a good session. I am going to apologize to the rainbows, unicorn, and butterfly person up there in Iowa that we got a little long on current events. But outside of that, until next week, be safe.
Y'all come back now, you hear?